Hey everybody, I'm Tommy Scoville. This is the Tommy Scoville Show, and this is the Ounce of Prevention series where I talk to parents about raising drug-free kids. There are two classes of drugs commonly referred to in this country. It's hard drugs and then everything else. Usually when people talk about hard drugs, they're talking about coke, heroin, meth, right, the really serious stuff. The others tend to fall into a category that they call recreational. You already know how I feel about recreational drugs. Hate it. Hate the term, hate everything about it. The purpose of an ounce of prevention is just to help you raise drug-free kids. It is the most important thing you're ever going to do in your life. Sorry, nothing else is more important. When they close the box, it doesn't matter what you drove, where you lived, right? It doesn't matter how much money you made. It doesn't matter if you were cool. What matters is if you affected the life of a child before you left. And that's what we're going to try to do here. We would like to make sure that your children don't grow up to be me. So, the first drug that I want to talk about in this series is going to be methamphetamine. Now, I realize that more than likely the first drug your child is going to do is weed, but the importance, and I mean as of today, in finding out about meth is because right now our country is being attacked by meth from different countries. I'm not getting into the political of this, but it's a fact. Most of the meth coming into this country right now is coming in from China, through Mexico, but it's coming in from China, it's coming in from North Korea. It's coming in from countries that hate us. And they're bringing so much in. They've dumped so much that when I was using methamphetamine recreationally in Nevada, it was $1,600 an ounce. Now, if you know somebody, you can get it for about $175 an ounce. People at $175 an ounce, your child can afford to do it. Honestly, an ounce is a ludicrously sized bag of methamphetamine for someone that's never done it before. Normally we used to buy what were called teeners, right? And that's a 1/16 of an ounce. Back in the day, a teener would cost you about $60 to $80, and it was a bag this big, right? For those of you who have never seen meth, first of all, this would be very, very small size of what they call shards, which is actually the crystals on the methamphetamine. So if you look at this, you see what the small chunks, right? Okay, now, truth of the matter is, I couldn't be in a room with meth. I just could not. It's never going to happen, right? So what you're looking at right here is actually Mediterranean sea salt. But the similarities in the size, now, I mean in the appearance. Now, this could also be powdered, which would look, as it gets pulverized, look a lot more like regular salt. And if this was the real deal Holyfield, there would be chunks in there. Sometimes they can be as big as your thumb. I've seen them as big as your fist, depending on how much you're buying. But that visual, right, is so similar to what the meth looks like. Now, more than likely, you would not find an entire bag of it. You might, but normally a drug user will have it on them. They're not going to go to school and leave the meth there. However, small amounts of it will end up all over the place. That's just sort of the nature of things. We're going to do the talk on meth in two sections because you're not going to sit through the amount of time that it would take me to go through all of it. First, the dangers. The reason that we have to concentrate on meth first is not just because it's cheap and coming from everywhere, but because the new stuff coming in isn't meth. When meth broke onto the scene, at least in it's speed, right? Is a synonym for the drug. People call it speed. It speeds up the body. Your heart beats faster. All of these things happen that are very much a kind of a thing as opposed to, the drugs that mellow you out. This does not mellow you out, much like cocaine. It's going to speed up your heart. It's going to speed up your life. It's going to make it almost impossible to sleep. When it first busted onto the scene, it was made with a substance called propanol, and it was called P2P. And the P2P meth that came out back in the day was a very different product than what's coming out today. What comes out today is made in a very, very different process. Now it's made more often than not using lithium. In fact, they take lithium strips out of batteries. They use something called anhydrous ammonia. I'm not a chemist, people, but anhydrous usually means without the water, right? Anhydrous. So the water's been removed. And it has to be kept under pressure. It looks like dry ice almost. It smokes up. But they take anhydrous ammonia, they put in lithium strips, and it's called a cold cook. It is much faster, and people, I've been there when somebody cooked the cold cook method, and actually went out to help him, and he was throwing in these strips into this sort of vat of anhydrous ammonia. And the chemical reaction that takes place in there, it almost looks like a lightning storm is going on inside the process. And I said to the guy, I said, how much lithium do you add? These strips that came out of batteries. I said, how much lithium do you add in there? And he goes, I don't know, 5 or 6. I said, no, what, like, is there an equation? If you use this much ephedrine, which is what you're mixing it with, the same stuff that's in Sudafed. That's why you have to have a driver's license now to buy Sudafed, because the ephedrine that comes in that pseudo is taken and made into methamphetamine. So to control that, now you have to show a driver's license if you want to buy more than a box. In this state, you can only buy 1 box for a certain period of time, and it's just a whole process. But I said, no, how much lithium do you put in, per amount? He goes, oh, no, it ain't like that. So the danger here is that in the state of Nevada, I talked to a police officer who said that in 1 year, they had busted 3,000 unique recipes. If you list the ingredients in any of these recipes, it will scare you to death. Coleman camping fuel is an ingredient. Lithium strips out of a battery are an ingredient. Muriatic acid is an ingredient. And through a process called gassing, they take aluminum foil, roll it up in a ball, throw it inside a thing of muriatic acid, and as that starts to have a chemical reaction, this gas comes off. And they put the gas over the top, literally over the top of this recipe, and it just starts to rain these, which inside the deal. And then they take all this and strain it all off, and once it dries, you put it in a spoon, crush it, cook it, stick it in your arm. Frightening? They also snort it, they also eat it, they also smoke it. In order to smoke this, it usually is the manufactured style bowls are glass about this long with a glass ball in the end. That ball has a hole in the top. This would get put into the bowl, then they heat it. As it liquefies, that liquid touches a cooler part of the glass, it gases up. People breathe that gas in, blow it out. That's how it's done. For children, it's difficult to walk into a head shop, which is a place that sells things like this. So more often than not, they're going to be using tin foil or they're going to be using light bulbs. Those are the 2 ways that most people are going to smoke it. And most people start off either snorting or smoking this. Snorting methamphetamine burns like you absolutely would not believe. It also has a ridiculously bad, bitter taste. And when you snort anything, it drips down the back of your throat, right through your nasal passages. And it's a very unpleasant experience under the best of circumstances, even with Coke or anything else. But with meth, it hurts. It literally hurts. So more than likely, your child is going to go to either eating it, unlikely, or smoking it, very likely. Most of the people who start with meth start by smoking it. So if light bulbs are disappearing out of the house, right, that's an issue. We've talked about that before. Take your tin foil, roll it out 3 feet. Take a black magic marker or a Sharpie and put a mark on it. Then carefully roll your tin foil back up. And then about once every week or so, roll it back out. Measure it again. People, if you have tin foil disappearing left and right, I mean just constantly disappearing, chances are there's a problem and you really need to start looking at what's going on in your child's life. One of the other things is, whether it's a light bulb, whatever it is, you take a cigarette lighter and you cook the bottom of it, right? Sometimes people use little mini torches that you can buy at any gas station, right? Okay, those torches are ideal because they don't create carbon, but they also burn out very quickly and they require gas to refill, so most kids are going to end up using a Bic lighter. So what happens then is that as you cook this, carbon builds up on the bottom of the bowl. And when it does, you can't see inside. You can't see how much meth you still have in there. You can't see if it's puddling, which is the term. People say different stuff, but my generation referred to that as puddling. As the substance liquefies and turns into a puddle, if you can't see the puddle inside, you don't know whether or not you need more, and you can burn the meth as you're cooking it. There's sort of an art form to doing this where you roll the pipe back and forth. The carbon becomes a dead giveaway, right? Carbon, when you get it on anything, if it brushes against anything it touches, it's going to put a black stripe of carbon on clothing, on whatever. You're gonna find that the more people sort of get into the life, the less they seem to worry about things like this. I've seen a million times where a guy took a pipe and then took the bottom of his pants, right, to clean it. You're going to find socks, you're going to find pants, you're going to find all kinds of things that get that carbon on it. Now, if you see one pair of pants and there's something black on them, your kid could have brushed up against a tire. I mean, never jump to conclusions on anything. But what you're looking for are patterns, right? So you start to look for patterns that develop. But if you see this black stuff on 5 pair of pants, if your child's not working at a garage, he probably didn't brush up against tires that many times, right? So you start to look for this. The other thing is that the pipes break. So do light bulbs, right? So it becomes very difficult for the user to control where all of that broken glass ends up. So if you're finding small pieces of broken glass on carpets, very oftentimes that broken glass will still have some of the black on it. If you find that, you don't need to find that twice. We now have an issue. The other thing about meth is that it steals your ability to sleep. Plain and simple, you're not going to fall asleep on meth. This becomes an issue because if you're going to enjoy the buzz, you're not going to lay in bed with the lights off, hiding from mom and dad. You're going to stay up and you're going to tweak, right? You're going to hyper-focus on something. Video games. There are people who do meth who will play video games for 3 days straight. If your child's playing video games at 2 a.m., he might love the game. She might love the game. It doesn't necessarily mean they're on meth, but it's the reason to start watching. Here's a dead giveaway. If your child plays video games until 5 a.m., right? And you catch them doing that, they're going to get tired, right? You're going to see a crash when they stop playing the video game. If they play video games until 5 o'clock in the morning and are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, then you really need to start taking a look at what's going on. If you're nervous, you can very easily say to a child, and have to, look, you know what? 3 nights I've caught you at 5 o'clock in the morning playing video games. We're gonna take a pee test today. You're gonna pee in a cup. Watch them pee into the cup. I mean watch them. This is your child. You've seen them naked before. You brought them into this world. I've gotten over on so many drug tests. I've gotten over on drug tests with people watching. You have to, if it's my child, I would say, Calhoun, drop your pants to your ankles, right? Stand there. You're not having anything. I want to see this happen. I want to know that this specimen was collected in such a way that I can trust it. Speaking of which, if you buy drug tests, you can buy a drug test, you buy them by the panel, right? So you can buy a 1 panel, that just tests for weed. You can buy a 2 panel. The gold standard is probably the 5 panel, and that's going to be marijuana, that's going to be amphetamines or methamphetamines. It's going to be benzodiazepines, like your Valium, your Xanax, all of that, cocaine, and opiates. If it's me, I'm not buying a 5-panel test. If it's me, I'm buying a 13, 15, if I can get it, a 32-panel test. I know you're going, there are 32 drugs? You betcha. But you're going to want to make sure that you're testing a broad spectrum because you just don't know. And some of these behaviors mimic other behaviors. A lot of people enter into the methamphetamine experimentation through Ritalin or Adderall, because for all intents and purposes, Ritalin and Adderall are just a non-crystallized form of speed, right? They're amphetamines. They're not crystal methamphetamine, but they are amphetamines. And it is so available and prevalent in schools because of how many kids have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and are given this as medications. So the dead giveaway is always going to be, first of all, pupils. You can look up all of that. That's not the purpose of this. But it's really more about behavioral and things of that nature. But the pupils are going to get larger. It is one of those things, right? Your pupils are going to get opiates. They get really, really small. Methamphetamine, they're going to get really, really big. And you will notice it. I promise you, if you glance into your child's eyes, there's something very noticeable about pupils that are too large. There really is. Now, don't become hyper paranoid about it, but in conjunction with other things. You have to always be looking for all of the different telltale signs. You've had 4 light bulbs disappear, or there's 6 inches of tin foil disappearing off of the roll every other day. And as you look at your child's clothing, there's carbon, bottom of tin foil, you're going to get carbon everywhere. You get carbon stains on the rug in their room. When they go into the bathroom, they're in there for 20 minutes. People, there is nothing normal about spending 20 minutes in the bathroom. If you're not showering, who spends 20 minutes in a bathroom, right? Watch for these behaviors. Please watch for these behaviors. Your child will be more bold than you think. Meth smoke, and it's technically smoke's not the right word, but whatever, for the purpose of this, meth smoke doesn't stink the way that other things do, and it dissipates very quickly out of the air. When your child realizes this, the level of bold, and the more they get away with, the more bold they will get. But the level of bold, they're going to smoke in the house, and that's going to mean carbon on carpets, that's going to mean carbon on beds. You have to be looking for this stuff constantly. And if you come across any of these things, not only do you have to drug test them, but if they fail, this is a difficult thing to fight alone. You will need a team. If it were my child, and I know a lot about drugs, and I have read everything you could read about raising, drug-free kids, how to deal with it when kids are on drugs, whatever the case may be. If it's my child and he tests positive for methamphetamine, he's going into rehab. There's no ifs, ands, buts, apologies. He's going into rehab, plain and simple. That's just the way it is. Now, people, you're not going to watch this video if I keep going. This is the statistics. I have a lot more to talk about. Next week, we are going to finish up the talk on crystal meth, more of the behaviors, more of what to look for. Again, Mediterranean sea salt. I'm never going to be in a room with drugs. When we get to heroin, I'm going to show you what it looks like, but it isn't going to be heroin where I'm at for the rest of my life. I don't need that kind of temptation. But this, right? This, if it were the real deal, is the scourge of this country right now. It's coming over from everywhere. It's readily available. It's cheap, and you really need to start watching to make sure that your child is not in this life. This has been the Ounce of Prevention. My name is Tommy Scoville. If you like what I'm doing, people, then you can go over and click right here, and this is going to make you a full-time member of this boat. You're going to have access to a wealth of knowledge. I don't mean me. I mean all of the people who are here on this boat. You can learn from them, and they'll all be here to help you. That's the nature of this boat. Over here are videos. Keep watching the Ounce of Prevention stuff. Keep watching the videos, people. We're trying to leave the earth a better place than we found it. I'm Tommy Scoville. This was the Tommy Scoville Show, Ounce of Prevention.